experience, about its application, and about what it can mean for us. I thought it was interesting that when we examine human civilization, and when we examine the myriad pursuits that we all engage in, we see that there is a unity of purpose. Every single one of us, through all of our activities, are ultimately looking to experience happiness. The question is simply the quality and the quantity and the duration of such happiness. The World Health Organization says that in the coming years, the biggest cause of unhappiness, the biggest cause of illness, disease, will be mental illness, which has a lot to do with people feeling dissatisfied internally. So we see that we may have so much, but sometimes we may have so much, but at the same time feel so empty inside. So what does this mean? What is this understanding of the human condition? And what does it mean for us in relation to this seemingly new, strange, unusual teaching that we call Krishna-Consciousness? Well, it's very, very interesting. We can consider that happiness is an internal experience. When I was doing my A-levels, we looked at media studies. And we were looking at how advertising works. And the teacher was explaining that in advertising, they don't sell the product, they sell the experience and the emotion. Does that make sense? Yeah? That rather than selling a product, the idea is if you buy this particular product, you will have this particular experience and this particular emotion, this particular feeling. Ultimately, the most sought-after experience that every single person is looking for, what unifies each and every one of us, irrespective of age, gender, nationality, race, background, social class, is this internal pursuit for happiness. In Sanskrit we say this is called Ananda Maya, that the living entity is by nature pleasure seeking. It is simply a question of how we are trying to tap into that particular desire for pleasure. There's a saying that in this world there are two things that you can be sure of, right? We live in a world of change, so many things are changing, but they're saying that there are two things that you can be sure of: death and taxes. You had that experience, right? So we want to know what Krishna-Consciousness is and what it can do for us. Actually, Krishna-Consciousness is more than a religion. In this particular day and age, often religion or God is seen as a four-letter word. Right? When people think of religion, they think of some kind of restriction. They think of a whole set of rules, regulations. When people think of religion, they often think of punishment, right? You better do what God tells you, right? And if you don't do what God tells you, He's going to really mess you up badly. This is the idea behind most people's conception of religion. But Krishna-Consciousness, as is explained in the ancient teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the Sanskrit that is used in the actual verses of the Bhagavad Gita, is Adi Atma Vidya Vidyanam, which is translated as the supreme science of self-realization. So what Krishna-Consciousness is giving through the pages of the Bhagavad Gita is not a belief system, but rather a spiritual science. This is the difference between belief and experience. One of the things that attracted me to this ancient teaching and this very powerful spiritual lifestyle is that the claim was made that instead of believing in God, one can have direct spiritual perception and experience and exchange with the Supreme Personality. It's a very, very powerful difference. So we're not actually talking about God in one sense. Right? There was a book which was written years ago, and the title and the concept of the book was talking about leadership. And the question was asked that if they took away your position, would people follow you? Right? It's an interesting question. If you're a parent in this room, raise your hand. Parents, raise your hand. Okay, so we have quite a few parents. If you are in some kind of leadership, authoritarian or managerial position, raise your hand. Anyone in such a position? Okay, so I'm asking you, I'm speaking to you. The people that you deal with, the people that you guide, if your position was taken away, would such people still follow you? It's an interesting question, isn't it? If you've got a manager, or if you've ever had a manager, raise your hand. Okay. Sometimes we give presentations in corporate companies. And one of the things that we discuss with the corporate professionals is about their relationship with their managers. And many corporate professionals hate their managers. Isn't that interesting? You're nodding very strongly, yes, you can relate to that. Many corporate professionals hate their managers. Right? They follow the manager based upon the manager's position. Right? They don't follow the manager based upon the manager's personality. This is a key concept. It seems like it's a secular consideration, but this has very, very strong significance to Krishna consciousness. It has strong significance to the difference between religion and spiritual science. If they took away your position, would they follow you? Why am I saying this? God is a position, and most traditions give emphasis to the position. That means the emphasis is on authoritarianism. You have someone in a supreme position who has power, who you have to follow because they can dominate. Krishna consciousness deals with the personality who occupies the position. It's a very, very significant difference. Krishna consciousness deals with the personality who is occupying that position. So most traditions know that there is a God. But Krishna consciousness speaks about the nature of that personality, the attributes of that personality, the activities of that personality, the beauty, the care, the concern, the feelings of that supreme personality. In other words, Krishna consciousness begins where religion ends. And it is, as we explained before, it is a supreme spiritual science. It's not a belief system. When I came or started to explore this science, I was studying at university. My degree was in philosophy and economics. I was studying at the London School of Economics. So we were trained to be very rigorous and very logical in our analysis. And one of the things that really struck me about Krishna consciousness was the idea that rather than believing in God, which is what many people do, that one can have an experience, a direct spiritual perception. This is called the Vasudev platform, where one is no longer believing in, speculating about, interpreting, having opinions and ideas on the nature of the Supreme, but one is literally involved in a very dynamic, a very powerful, and a very tangible, divine, spiritual connection with that Supreme Person. This is a very, very different conception. And this is not a conception of following the Supreme because of his power and our fear. But this is an exchange of love based upon care, love, concern, and intimacy. So we are advocating in Krishna consciousness that people should not believe in God. The Krishna conscious paradigm is that no one should believe in God. There should not be blind faith or blind doubt. So if we don't believe, if we don't disbelieve, what is the other option? What is the third way? If we have a science, science means three things. Right? Science means theory, experiment, and conclusion. Right? So in the Vedic tradition, in the Vedic literatures, the theory is called Sambandha Gyan, which is the theoretical knowledge. Then we have the procedure or the process. This is called Abhideya. And if one if one applies the knowledge properly in their own life, they come to what is called prayojana, which means a spiritual conclusion. And in that spiritual conclusion, one is able to experience the Lord, and in addition to that, one is able to experience one's own pure spiritual nature. This is interesting because what is claimed through the advertising, what is claimed through practically everything that we're doing is that if you do this, it will make you happy, right? It's like now my brother, he was talking about his new phone, right? The Samsung Galaxy S3, right? So for those of you who are technical buffs, you love that, right? He's got a new phone and it does so many different things, right? And I think you can relate to that, right? When you get a new technology, a new gadget, you've seen the adverts on TV. This changes everything again. The idea is that by buying some particular commodity, it will revolutionize our experience. In the beginning, it gives us some kind of stimulation. So there are many things that we do which give us some stimulation. We call this in Sanskrit chapala sukha, so we can get some happiness, some flickering happiness. But often, the very thing that makes us happy today becomes the very thing that causes us to be unhappy tomorrow. Isn't that the case? Can anyone relate to that experience? Yeah. So it is natural when we analyze our own situation that we don't want to have just some temporary happiness. We don't want to have something that will make us happy today, but which will cause us to be suffering tomorrow. Some of the people I speak to, one professional I spoke to was going through a divorce. One of these big companies, he was a manager, very senior position. And it was interesting because I think the statistics show that right now, I think about 2/3 of marriages end in divorce. Is that correct? Right? The divorce rate in the Western world is very high. Practically 2 out of every 3 marriages end in divorce. And guess what? When those two people got together, when they were having their big wedding, do you think that they were happy? Yes. Right? Who could imagine what would happen further down the line? So often, the very thing that causes us to be happy today can be the cause of our boredom, dissatisfaction, depression, or unhappiness tomorrow. But the spiritual science of Krishna consciousness has tremendous experiences and flavors to it. It simply requires people who have enough strength of character, humility and honesty in order to check. The theme of this presentation, which I repeat again and again, is that the Krishna conscious teachings state that you should not believe in God. Is that clear? We systematically posit or propose that no one should believe in God, but if you don't check, if we don't check, then we have to be honest and say that we don't want to know if he exists. Does that make sense? Yeah? So this is not a question of force, it's not a question of obligation, right? Someone was telling me recently that there's a sale on, right? You have your summer sales, right? That if you go to a particular department store, you can get a sale. Now, I may believe the person, I may not believe the person, but if I have the opportunity to check, isn't that amazing? If I had the opportunity to check and I don't do so, then what does that say about me as a person? Right? That, sometimes you hear about couples being together and someone's having an affair, right? Someone's having an affair and you try and tell the person, I think there's something going on, right? I think your wife may be seeing someone else. And the person states blankly, she would never do that. I think they're meeting at this particular place, this particular time. And that person is not prepared to check. What does that mean? Ultimately, for much of human civilization at this present moment in time, we're in denial. But that denial of the deeper spiritual realities means that we don't experience a whole new dimension and range of adventures that we can experience. We're saying in Krishna consciousness that you don't have to give anything up. We're saying that we can add Krishna. Right? We're saying we don't have to give up our job, our family, our relationships. The Krishna conscious teachings are so powerful that we can simply add Krishna. And how do we do this? The simplest way to do this is to engage in a very simple practice of mantra meditation. In the teachings and the lifestyle of Krishna consciousness, you'll find that devotees give emphasis to chanting the supreme names of the Supreme Person. So often you'll hear the devotees chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Why are they chanting this mantra? It's not because they don't know the lyrics to other songs. This mantra, it tunes the consciousness in to higher states of reality. Very powerful. Now, this guy on this stage today is making this statement. How do you know if it's true? I could be lying, right? I could be lying. But again, spiritual science means that we check, isn't it? If we really want to know how something tastes, we have to eat it. No amount of observing another person eating a meal will give us any understanding about the nature of the meal. So the proof, as they say, is in the eating. So we encourage you to consider and to experiment with three things. The A, B, and C of spiritual experience. A stands for association, that we can connect. There are many devotees in this building, in this room, that we can inquire from, ask questions, explore, discuss the teachings with. So A stands for association. B, we have some books of transcendental spiritual understanding or wisdom, where we can explore, research, and try to analyze. So the B stands for books. And then there is the C. C stands for the chanting, the mantra meditation that we were speaking about. That by engaging in this spiritual exploration, one will have an experience of spiritual bliss or spiritual happiness, which will go beyond anything that we can experience just on the material platform or paradigm. We're sharing this information with all of you in this room because the consideration is that every one of you in this room are in some way particularly special. Every single one of you in this room has a special quality to them That we are able to be here to consider something beyond and above the norm, where many people at this present time are just following the standard patterns. Someone told me a joke recently. It was about a young guy who was at the age in which he was due to get married. So his friend said to him, you're due to get married, how come you're not married yet? And the guy said, I've been trying. I've been trying really hard to find someone. And his friend said, so what happened is I found a really nice girl. I brought her home to meet the family. And his friend said, so when you brought her home to meet the family, what happened? He said, my mom said no. Right? My mom disapproved of this girl. And his friend said, so is that it, you just gave up? He said, no, I tried again. I found another really wonderful lady. And I brought her home to meet the family. Right? And he said, what happened? He said, again, my mom said no. She didn't approve. His friend pondered and he said, you know what? You know what you should do? You need to find a girl who's just like your mom. Right? And bring her to meet the family. He said, I tried that. Right? He said, really? He said, yes. I found a girl, I brought her home. She was just like my mom. His friend said, so what happened? He said, my dad said no. You understand the point? Right? He said, my dad said no. So often we're looking for approval, we're looking to follow, but there's something above the standard. Right? Is there anyone in this room who could put their hand up and say that I'm happy to be your average person? Anyone in this room? Is there anyone in this room who's happy to settle for mediocrity? No. Where does that desire for something greater than the norm come from? According to our ancient teachings, it is an urge, it is a need of the soul, because in our pure state, that is who we are. Every one of us has a unique spiritual individuality, unique spiritual loving exchanges with the Supreme Person, and we can experience that simply by this exploration and experiment of Krishna consciousness. So in conclusion, we want to thank you for your time. We want to encourage you in your spiritual exploration. We want to encourage you in the A, E's and C's. A, association with spiritual people who can answer our questions and help us to understand. We want to encourage you in the B, reading the spiritual books of wisdom with a mind to analysis and seeing how we can engage in this experiment in our own lives. And we want to encourage you in the C, the chanting of the supreme or divine names, so that we don't just believe in God, but we can come to the platform where we can hear the Supreme Person, practically hear His voice. We can see the Supreme Person and we can engage in direct, loving exchanges with that Supreme Person. And at the end of this life, return back to the original kingdom, the original divine kingdom from which we all came. Thank you so much for your time and encouragement. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Bhuta Bhavana. Give him a big round of applause, please. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So as you can hear, he's been practicing this culture for a long time, and he understands it very well. Makes lots of nice practical